Apologies to the members of the public that we were a little late in getting you up, but we would not have dreamed of starting the meeting without having you with us. So we did just delay for a few moments until the members of the public had joined us. So welcome then to this meeting of the Western Area Planning Committee of Wiltshire Council. My name is Newbury. I'm the chairman of the committee. I will, in a moment, talk you through the procedure because most of the visitors will not be very familiar with our way of doing things. So in a moment, I will talk you through the way that we deal with planning items. The first item on the agenda is apologies, and we have a Democratic Services Officer on my left who is going to just tell us about any apologies.
Thank you, Chair. So we've had apologies from Councillor Pip Ridout and we have Councillor Mike Sankey substituting.
Thank you to Councillor Sankey for standing in for Councillor Ridout. There you are, I see, in the third row with a nameplate. So the next item then is the minutes of the previous meeting, circulated about a week ago. Does anyone have any corrections or additions to those minutes? In that case, I will move that we approve them as a correct record. Is there someone to second? Councillor Bill Parks. All in favour, please indicate. Any against? Those are approved. The declarations of interest, item 3, this is only for members of Wiltshire Council. Nobody else who might think they have any interests needs to declare anything. This is just a technical item to comply with the legislation. Does anyone who is a member of Wiltshire Council have any interests to declare for today's meeting? I'm not seeing any. So we move on. Chairman's announcements. The first one is, could I ask everyone to switch off or put onto silent any mobile phones or other devices? It is quite disconcerting when someone is speaking and all of a sudden it rings or noises go off. So if you could put everything to silent, that would be much appreciated. If you hear what do you call it, a fire alarm, my colleague will jump up and tell you how to get out of the building safely and quickly. The public participation, which we're just coming on to, there are two ways to do this. For those who have signed in, and I'll tell you who they are, those who have successfully got their names down to speak as members of the public, Mr. Kenneth Graham, Cecilia Hughes, and Councillor Richard Wood. These are all for the Semmington Road Melksham application. For those, we can either take you immediately under that item, public participation, or you can speak when your item comes up, which is what most people prefer to do. If anyone has signed in to speak and would like to speak now, please wave a hand. I don't see anyone, so we will take you when the moment comes. And we take you in that order. We take Mr. Graham first. It's the way we do it. Objectors first, then supporters, which means Cecilia Hughes, and finally the parish or town council, which is Councillor Richard Wood. And the objectors and supporters have up to 3 minutes each, and Councillor Wood has up to 4 minutes, and that's the way it's done. The other thing that I need to say is that, as most of you will be aware, the item on our agenda for Chapmanslade, High Street Chapmanslade, has been withdrawn and so will not be dealt with today. I understand that it is likely to be leading to a new and revised application, which will come to us in due course. We can't say exactly when. So thank you to everybody for any efforts you put in on that, particularly those who've been and visited the site, but it will not be wasted because I gather it will be coming back to us in due course. The public participation then, we don't have anyone signed in who wants to speak now. Do we have any questions? No, we don't have any questions. So that takes us on to the first main item on the agenda, number 6, which is planning, appeals and updates. And our senior planning officer, Kenny Green, is sitting over there on my far right in a green shirt for those who don't know him, and he is there to speak to this, and I will ask him to take us through it. Kenny.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have much to say today for this because there have been no appeal decisions issued for that period in the report. There are 3 appeals listed on page 17, which officers are in the process of writing statements for. Chairman, you will know the King's Head, Chitton appeals. There's one for a planning application and one for a listed building consent. That's why there's 2 listed. And then there's another appeal for Steeple Ashton, and likewise, another officer is tasked with writing the statement for those 3 appeals. So nothing really else to report, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Yes, I am aware of the King's Head Chitton application. I had to contact the Salisbury Journal to correct a report that it put out, which was that the application for change of use had been refused on the grounds of the impact on the listed building, and they'd got confused between 2 quite different applications that had been decided both in May of last year. So we will look forward to, all 3 of those were delegated decisions, so we must hope that officers will be getting on with defending them all. Right, that then brings us to the first and indeed the only planning item on today's agenda, which is land number 7, land at Semington Road, Melksham. I have Stephen Sims, who is the case officer on my right, who will in a moment take us through the application. The procedure then for dealing with this is that Stephen Sims will give his report. We then ask the members of the committee if they have any questions to the case officer, and we go through those. We take the public contributions, the 3 names that I've already read out. We go to the local unitary member, Councillor Seed, who in this case is a member of the committee. So he will then give us his views on this and begin the debate, and probably will move something. And then we have a debate on it and take a decision. So that's, I hope, fairly straightforward. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Sims, who will talk us through his report with some slides.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, this is an application at land at Semington Road, Melksham. The application is a reserved matters application for the erection of 144 dwellings. Matters for consideration at this stage are the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale of the development. The principle of development was established by the granting of outline application 2019-38 outline in January 2021, where the access to the site was also approved. Recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Just to advise, we have received 1 late representation from a neighbouring resident. It's also my understanding that this representation has been forwarded to councillors. I won't go into great detail of what was submitted, but in summary, the comments raised include legal issues regarding land ownership of the proposed site access, impact on the amenity of residents in terms of overshadowing, loss of light, and highway safety issues at the access, including loss of pedestrian footpath, and also there was issues regarding property value. It should be noted that many of these issues are dealt with in the main body of the report. Impact on the development of house prices is not a planning issue. In addition, it should be noted that land ownership disputes between third parties are also not a planning issue. However, on that matter, we've received updated information from the agent with regards to land registry details of the access, and this forms a slide later on in the presentation. As you can see, the application side consists of currently agricultural fields, approximately 8.2 hectares in size. The site is located to the east of the village of Berryfield, south of Melksham, and west of Bower Hill. Residential properties border the site along Semington Road to the west. The A350 borders the site to the east. Shells Lane borders the site to the south, which is currently used to access the sewage treatment works, which is adjacent to the northeast boundary of the site. Commercial development to the south, Hampton Business Park, is located on the opposite side of Shells Road. Just to the north, as you can see on this slide, that does indicate the development. However, my understanding is development has there's a lot more construction that's currently shown on the overhead slide. That was for 150 dwellings. So that's well underway. The site lies within the sewage treatment works buffer zone. However, it should be noted there were no objections to the scheme from Wessex Water, and an odour assessments carried out at outline stage that concluded that there would be no harm to local residents. Main access to the site is proposed off Semmington Road, northwestern corner. This access was approved at outline stage. Along the western boundary of the site is the route of the old Wiltshire and Berkshire Canal. Berry Brook is located along the northern boundary of the site. It should be noted the application site is located outside the settlement, any settlement boundary. However, as stated previously, planning permission was granted under outline application. This was approved at the Strategic Committee in January 2021, with the decision notice being issued in September 21 following negotiation of the Section 106 agreement. So, and that just highlights constraints of the site, a red line around the boundary, the village of Berryfield to the west, commercial development to the south, and Bower Hill commercial development to the east. And this just shows the new development to the north of the site, the sewage treatment works, and the A3350 to the east. So this is a slide of the proposed layout. As stated, the scheme consists of the erection of 144 dwellings. A total of 43 dwellings would be affordable, comprising affordable rent and shared ownership. The provision of the affordable housing would be spread out through the site. We've got a slide showing that a bit later on. The proposal comprises 2 and 2.5 storey houses with a mix of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 bedroom dwellings located off the through road. You can see the through road coming through that comes back on itself, with development located off cul-de-sacs. Building materials for the dwellings consist of mainly red brick, reconstituted stone and render. Roof materials will be grey and brown tiles. Plots would be defined by a combination of 1.8 metre high walls, timber or close boarded fencing. Access to the site, as stated, would be off a new vehicle and pedestrian access off Semmington Road, and this access would actually also serve the sewage treatment plant to the northeast, where access currently is off Shells Road. Concerns were raised by third parties in the parish about use of Shells Lane by contractors, and in response, the agent has confirmed that Shells Lane will not be used by contractors moving forward, and access to the site for development purposes would be via the new access off Semmington Road. The scheme complies with our car parking standards in terms of minimum car parking, and it's also considered there is an appropriate level of visitor parking at 29 spaces overall. The detailed scheme would include 3.2 hectares of open space, mainly located to the north and northeast of the site. This also includes a local equipped play area, Leap for short, which is the circular spot located to the northeast, and an outdoor gym area located to the north, adjacent to the attenuation ponds. There's 2 attenuation ponds proposed, one to the north and one adjacent to the northeast boundary of the site. A large area of open space to the northeast corner of the site is going to be an area of meadow grassland used as a habitat protection area and a reptile and amphibian receptor area. This area will be enclosed by a fence, but there is a gate allowing access to the site. A pedestrian and green corridor will run through the site, north-south. This effectively is the existing access road to the sewage treatment plant. This corridor will consist of the existing tarmac track and existing hedgerows to either side, with gaps in the hedgerows planted up. Additional tree planting and hedgerow planting is proposed throughout the site and on the boundary of the site. A 3-metre high acoustic fence is proposed along the southern boundary of the site, adjacent the commercial properties to the south. This will extend across the bottom of the Shells Lane access to make sure that there's no obvious route from the site to Shells Lane, although an access gate is proposed in this fence to allow servicing of this area of the access road. Separation distances between the rear of the development and properties fronting Symington Road to the west is between 80 and 95 metres, kind of elevation to elevation. The closest points where it meets existing development is one to the north, where the first plot would sit relatively close to the existing residential property. That separation distance is 20 metres, but I've got a slide of that later on. And then to the south, where the property fronts Shells Lane, we've got a separation distance of over 30 metres on that one. So on average, quite a distance between the residential property and the existing properties fronting Symington Road. As such, it's considered the site layout is considered acceptable, and there would be no loss of privacy or overlooking with regards to the existing layout and proposed residence. The ecological impacts of the scheme have been considered at outline stage. The long-term landscaping ecological management of the site has been dealt with by the submission of a construction environmental management plan and a landscape ecological management plan, and these have been dealt with by condition. On-site mitigation includes the habitat protection area to the northeast, bordered by a post and rail fence and hedgerow, creation of reptile log piles and herbaceous, and the introduction of bat boxes and bird boxes throughout the site. In addition, the watercourse to the north of the site would be buffered to protect the flora and fauna in this area. The scheme generally accords with that approved at outline stage. What we have is a proposed cross-section through the site. This illustrates the variation in types of house designs and use of materials. We've put in some examples of the property types. So a 3-bedroom property, 2-storey. Another example of 3-bedroom property, but slightly smaller than the previous. This is one of the examples of the 2.5-storey 3-bedroom properties that are located throughout the site. And an example of a 4-bedroom property detached. And I've included an example of the terrace, the masonette and the terrace masonettes. So these are 1-bedroom. This slide shows the effectively building mix, mainly 2-storey with some 2.5-storey dwellings located throughout the site. This is an example. This is a plan of the play area, the locally equipped play area. And as you can see, it includes a number of features, including swings and climbing frames and so on. This slide effectively shows the green corridor running north-south through the site. This is a slide showing part of the landscaping. To the north of the site, it includes the gym area and attenuation pond and the buffer zone to the north with the brook. This is a slide of the landscaping to the northeast, which includes the local equipped play area and area of wild grass and reptile receptor area. And this is the slide of some of the landscaping to the south, including the proposed access, the access gate onto Shells Lane and the additional hedge planting along the site. This slide shows the location of the affordable housing located throughout the site. As you can see, it is spread around the site from the north, centre and south of the site. Obviously, the affordable housing is the red and blue properties. This is a slide of, so what we decided to do is put the proposed housing mix on the slide, 144 houses proposed altogether, 43 affordable rented, affordable dwellings, including shared ownership and affordable rent. It includes 8 one-bedroom, 2-person masonettes, 4 of which are adaptable units. So overall, you can see of the 144 houses, this is the proposed housing mix, the total of market dwellings and affordable housing. So we're looking at an approximate number of 40% 3-bedroom, dropping off to 16 and 22% 2 and 4-bedroom properties, with 17% 5-bedroom properties. This level of development was negotiated throughout the scheme, and officers considered this level of housing to be acceptable for the size of the site and its location. We've done a closer up plan of plot 19 and the adjacent, one of the closest residential properties to the site, 513A Symington Road. This property fronts Shells Lane. As you can see, the separation distance from the front of plot 19 to the side elevation of 513 is approximately 32 metres. That's considered acceptable in planning terms, not to result in any significant levels of overlooking or loss of privacy. This shows the approximate distance between plot 1 and the existing property at 492 Symington Road, which is just south of the access. The separation distance of the side elevation to plot 1 and the rear elevation of plot 492, the number 492, is approximately 20 metres. There are no windows proposed at first floor level, and the boundary fence is a 1.8 metre high, proposed to be a 1.8 metre high fence. We've put a condition on stating that there should be no additional first floor windows. So overall, we're happy that the scheme would not result in any kind of overlooking or loss of privacy to residents of this property. Due to the separation distance, we are aware as there would be some overshadowing or loss of light to the rear garden area in the early days, in the early morning, as you can see as the sun moves east to the west round. You would get some overshadowing in the early mornings, but as the day progresses, that level of overshadowing and loss of light would go. Officers considered the impact on amenity to be acceptable. What we have is a slide of the access. This has been approved at outline stage, amended by a later non-material amendment application. The new access would serve the Bower Hill sewage treatment works, as well as the development. The scheme also includes, and this was conditioned at outline stage, we have the application to deal with these conditions with us at present, although no decision has been made on this. It includes the provision of a northbound cantilever bus shelter, where the yellow marking is. It also includes improving the existing zebra crossing. I've got some photographs of this later on, and includes the reconstruction and widening of the footpath where it indents slightly where there's currently a bus stop. This shows the access road coming into the site, and it's where it will access the sewage treatment works, and then obviously join the proposed development. Some photographs. This is looking north, probably taken from close to the south end of the site, looking north towards the sewage treatment plant. You just see the pole just there belonging to the plant, so the plant is behind this line of trees. This is looking south towards the business park, with Shells Lane located probably to the just where the mouse is running here, and you can see in the background the commercial development. This is a photograph of the access off Semmington Road. This is a relatively new photograph taken just a few months ago, so you can see where the proposed access would go between properties. And this would be the main access to the site and the main construction access to the site. This is just a slide of the access road to the sewage treatment works as it comes off Shells Lane. And we have a photograph of the zebra crossing, and on the left there is where the bus stop, where the new Cantilever bus stop will go. And this really just shows, you can just about see it, the indent where the buses pull in. That will be, the pavement will be extended to effectively remove the bus pull-in point. I think at present it sits between not being a proper full pull-in point and obviously not a particularly wide footpath. This is the Environment Agency flood map, just showing the very north of the site where it is the site is subject to surface water flooding from the brook. As you can see from the previous plans, the area is to the north of the site where the open space is located. And this just highlights some of the biodiversity features I've spoken about earlier, the meadowland, the attenuation ponds to north and northeast, the green corridor running through the site, and additional hedge planting throughout. We've just listed the planning obligations. These were agreed at outline stage, including early years contribution, primary education contribution, and money towards highway projects, including a anti-person fence along the western side of the A30, healthcare provision, arts provision, and waste and recycling provision, and obviously establishment of a management company to manage the open spaces. This goes back to my original comment, where we received additional late representations from a neighbouring resident. Due to those comments, we went back to the developer and agents and just requested additional information in terms of land ownership and land registry details. The agent has advised that the agent has provided, this is the plan here in the northeast of the slide. This is a part of the land registry details submitted by the applicant, recently registered, showing their land ownership. What they've done here is overlay that to some degree over the proposed access with the blue line. So you can see that the access sits within the land registry approved area. And I've just attached the approved access plan here as well. My understanding is it's not particularly visible on these plans, but there's an area of hedging just here where I'm running the mouse along that I believe the neighbouring resident highlighted as an area of issue where there's a disagreement over ownership. But I think what we're trying to show here is that we've got details from the applicants. The land registry details show that the access is fully within the area that they state is in their ownership. Therefore, what we're really looking at is a dispute between third parties over land ownership issues. And what we've attached here to the slides is Councillor Newbury will, Councillor Seed will bring up some highlight some amendments to the informatives and conditions of the application. So we've got these slides ready so they can be discussed if and when necessary. Okay, so thank you very much for that. So in conclusion, officer recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. First thing then is questions from members of the council, and I see Councillor Ernie Clark. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of questions. The first one probably isn't relevant, but I'd be intrigued. I recall that the outline permission was given by Strategic. Why has this not gone back to Strategic? Why has it come here? And secondly, the local play areas, the leaps and the outdoor gym, who will be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance, please? Thanks, Chairman.
Mr. Sims.
Yeah, thank you. My understanding is with planning applications, outline applications go to strategic committee, but if a reserve matters application is called to committee, it goes to the area planning committee. We discussed this both with Kenny and Andrew Guest, and that's my understanding of the way the situation works.
Kenny.
Thanks, Chair. There's an additional point to make, that there is a threshold within the Constitution for residential development, and that's 200. So this is below the 200 threshold. So we obviously can't turn the clock back and question why the outline went to strategic rather than area committee. That was a decision made by Mike Wilmot at the time, that outline applications, pretty much no matter how many houses, generally went to strategic rather than area committee. But in terms of reserve matters applications, following on from a outline application, even if that outline application went to strategic, if it's below the 200 threshold, it's well within the remit of an area committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kenny. I mean, clearly, the Constitution seems quite clear, thresholds for what goes to the Strategic Planning Committee. There is that provision which allows the head of development control to take any application that he or she chooses to the Strategic Planning Committee, and Mr. Wilmot used to use that quite often. I'm hoping that our new head of development management will be less gung-ho, because I think some of these applications that are within our scheme of delegation powers ought really to come to us. So I'm hoping that we will get fewer snatched away from us, because the Strategic Planning Committee very often doesn't have the local knowledge. So thank you for raising that point. Are there any other questions? I see Councillor Sankey. Oh, sorry, you haven't finished, Ernie. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yes, following your question, the local play area and outdoor gym, that would be organised and looked after by the management company that would be installed on site.
Councillor Sankey, and then I saw another hand, Councillor Parks and Councillor Carbin, and also Councillor Weiger.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking at the Section 106 agreement earlier on, and included on there is provision of 2 bungalows. But those bungalows seem to be missing from the list that we've just been shown during the presentation. Could we have an explanation for that, please?
Mr. Sims.
Yes, sure. I'll just go back to the housing mix slide. You're correct. What's happened in between time is that the scheme has been amended slightly, and we've accepted that instead of bungalows, we will take adaptable maisonettes. So although the Section 106 does state that, it can be agreed in writing that we accept the amendments submitted by the applicant, and that's the case. And also we have no objection to the changes from our affordable housing team.
It's an interesting point, though, isn't it, that there is a great shortage of bungalows, and would we, I mean, clearly there's nothing we can do about it today, I think, but is it something that the council could take some steps, have some policy in the new local plan about certain provision of bungalows?
It's an interesting one, and without giving too much away, I live in a bungalow and they're great. But we know one of the issues face us now is obviously size-wise. They tend to take up a lot of plot size, and I suspect the policies that we're looking at won't want to go into that level of detail on housing provision. So they're usually looking towards a housing mix. Even our policy now doesn't actually state particular levels of different housing. It just says that we should, get to an agreed scheme. We were able to use it in this case to increase the number of 3-bedroom properties and decrease the number of 4-bedroom properties that originally submitted the application. But I think that would be something for our policy team to take up.
Okay, well, that's another matter for another day, I think. Can I move on to Councillor Parks?
If I may.
Off you go.
I also understand there's an undertaking to for the provision of fencing along the A350. And I would point out that Shells Lane was actually closed off at the suggestion of the coroner following a fatal accident some years ago. Is there any way that that fencing could be included as a condition, assuming that this current application was approved?
Mr. Sims.
Because of the costs of the fencing and what's required, and it sits outside the settlement, sorry, it sits outside the application site, that's in the section 106, and without going through the detail of the section 106, I presume there's a trigger point when the fencing needs to be put in place. So that should be sufficient, and we wouldn't really need a condition attached to the reserve matters application because that would be agreed in the section 106 legal agreement.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Parks, could I just clarify something? We have the gate between the existing sewage access road and Shales Lane, and that I think is to prevent general traffic from using the substandard Shales Lane. Will that allow pedestrian access? Clearly the existing road is going to be used by walkers and cyclists. Can they access Shales Lane at the bottom, or will the gate prevent them?
At the request of the parish and I think local residents, what we decided was that there would be no pedestrian access between the application site and Shales Lane. So what we're proposing, and we've received amended plans about this issue. Let me just see if I can find a suitable. So what we're talking about is that Shales Lane runs along the bottom of the site here. It then goes up north, which effectively forms the access to the sewage treatment. And then from that point onwards, it becomes a bit of an overgrown footpath where it reaches the A350. The proposal is to extend the acoustic fencing that's on the southern area of the site across the bottom of that area. So it adjoins the existing hedging there. And that should stop kind of anyone wanting really to pass through the site to Shales Lane. The fence, the gate that's going to be proposed that we put a condition on for details is to allow service access only to that. My understanding is there's a lot of services under Shales Lane itself. So the answer is that there should be no pedestrian or vehicle access from the development site to Shales Lane via that way, but obviously the utility companies would have access to that gate to access the services at the bottom of Shales Lane.
So it's something like a close meshed gate, is it?
So
And how high is it?
yeah, so the acoustic fencing is 3 metres high, but what we've done is, we've conditioned requesting details of the fencing, but the condition states it should be it should be a minimum of 2 metre height. So we've got the plan showing the acoustic fencing across the southern area, the access, and we've conditioned details of the access gate.
Okay. Well, I off the top of my head, I can't see any harm in allowing the kids to go through there, but that I think is a matter for the debate. Let's move on to the other questions. We have Councillor Parks and then Councillor Viger. And was there anyone else waiting? And Councillor Carbin. I think it was Councillor Parks, Councillor Carbin, and then Councillor Viger. Councillor Parks. So is Shells Lane a highway? And can you tell us the arrangements for somebody having the ability to use it? Is there a key? Is there a padlock? Is there what?
Yeah, my understanding is Shells Lane is a private road, but I presume that the sewage treatment plant has access to, they use it to access the site, so I presume that's in whatever agreement, legal agreement is allows them to access. My understanding, how the gate would work is it would be the utility companies, Wessex Water would have access to that gate, but it wouldn't be local residents as such. So they would have access, so what we're proposing is the new access to sewage treatment works is off the new access off Sevington Road, which is a wider access and certainly a lot more suitable for accessing the site. But because of the services under the southern area, they need access through that gate. And I suspect there might be legal agreements in place meaning that can't be closed off. So my understanding of the way the situation would work is that it would be Wessex Water that would control access through the gate.
Thank you. And has anybody given any consideration to the fact that if this is a solid 2 or 3 metre high gate, it does sort of reduce the it discourages walking, doesn't it? It sort of seems to be against our policies.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct, Councillor. This really blocking off the access has come at the request of the parish, and my understanding is local residents along Shells Lane who don't want access from the site to them. So, and as with a lot of planning, it's a balance of different needs. So you are correct, it does block off the route as a walking or cycling route from Shells Lane to the north through the site, but because of highway safety issues and the fact that Shells Lane is a private road, we agreed with the parish and local residents on this, and that's why we requested the details we've got.
Okay, let's go back then. So we have, does that finish your question, Councillor Parks? I do see you, Councillor Wickham. Can I go? I think Councillor Carbin was next, and then I'll come to Councillor Viger and Councillor Wickham. Councillor Carbin.
Just about the zebra crossing. I was a bit uncertain as to what's actually happening with it. Given that it exists already, how is it being upgraded apart from just a bucket of paint to make it a bit whiter? What's actually happening to it?
Yep, I think you're correct. As part of the scheme conditioned at outline stage, it included some minor amendments to the road layouts, the addition of the bus stop, the infilling of the lay-by, and upgrading the zebra crossing to what's on the plans there. Let me just see if we've got the photograph of that. So at present, as you can see, it's not pretty well clear, so I assume it's just upgrading the road markings, yes.
I think Councillor Viger and then Councillor Wickham.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the change in the housing mix from the outline to the reserve matters. I'm just looking at the outline application and I'm struggling to see any housing mix actually stated by the applicant there. In fact, the plan doesn't look as if it's got 144 homes on it. They look more sparse than the one we're seeing in front of us here. But I suppose the main question I've got is, what can you talk us through any planning policies that apply to a change in mix between outline and reserve matters? Is there anything either in the NPPF or in our own Wiltshire policies that prescribes to what extent you can change the mix between the two? Because, you know, you've mentioned that it has been changed and we've seen other applications similar.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So what we have is we have Core Policy 45 meeting Wiltshire's housing needs. So at the outline stage, what we have in the description, it would have said something like, I have got the actually the outline report here. Let me just grab that. The outline report
At times it says 155 in the outline.
Yeah, outline permission for up to 140 dwellings. So that was the description of the outline. So that at reserve matter stage allows us to deal with housing up to 144 in number. But a lot of times with the submission of the outline, we might not have agreed the actual housing mix because they might not know, the developer might not know the level of housing, quantum of housing and the size of plots before they get on site. So it does tend to be left open a little bit until the reserve matter stage, but it can sometimes be agreed at outline. But in this case, there was quite a high number of 4 and 5 bedroom properties originally submitted. So during negotiations, we negotiated them down to more 3 bedroom properties, which I think was highlighted by the parish as a need in the local area.
So when you say originally submitted, was that at the time of the outline or was it at some point between the outline and now?
Yes, so the outline application would have just covered up to 144 housing and with no mix. So the mix is something we negotiated at this current stage of the application reserve matters with the backing of our CP45 policy.
Great, thank you.
I've got Councillor Wickham and then Councillor Davis. And I think that will conclude the questions and we will go on to the public participation. Councillor Wickham.
Thank you, Chair. I note there's a healthcare provision for £137,000 towards the cost of supporting primary healthcare. Can I ask, do we know where that goes? Does it go into a specific setting or a general pot? Just really clarification on that, please.
Mr Sims, who gets the money?
The answer is yes. During the Section 106 process, we are required to highlight where these pots of money go. So I would have to go through the Section 106 to find out where it's been allocated, but my understanding is it is allocated to a specific project.
If you let me have it, I'll quickly find it. Kenny.
Yeah, I've got this to hand, believe it or not. So on page 11 of the section 106, it says primary healthcare means a sum of £137,000, which will go towards the cost of supporting Melksham and Bradford and Avon primary care network. So the money comes to the council first because the NHS have to have a dedicated project, which may or may not require planning permission itself. So we hold the money until the NHS have a dedicated project. Some of it requires planning permission, so we need to have an application that hopefully will get approved, and then we release the money to the NHS. Sometimes the NHS don't actually need to physically extend a GP practice, in which case they don't need to apply for planning permission, but they may come up with a different project, an extended car park, that will require planning permission, and some of the money can go towards that. So the Section 106 leaves it quite generic in terms of it goes to the local NHS primary care network, but the project has to be created by NHS first. So the NHS has a series of clauses in which it's set out that the money comes to the council at the appropriate trigger point. We hold the money until the NHS tell us the dedicated project. So that's sort of the answer, Chair.
Thank you, Kenny. Does that answer your questions?
Well, can I just ask what happens if they don't come up with a project?
Well, there's a clawback for all Section 106 monies. So if, for whatever reason, a project doesn't come forward after a certain period of time, which is usually 10 years, so it's not 10 years from the date of decision, it's 10 years from the last payment trigger, which could be 5-10 years' time. So it's 10 years beyond that. If after all that period, no development has taken place, no project has been identified, then the council have got no other option other than to send the money back to the developer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. I mean, I'm showing my ignorance. I don't know what a primary care network is. I mean, we have more than one doctor's surgery in Melksham. The doctor's surgeries are private businesses owned by the partners in the doctor's business. What is a primary care network? Is that something different from the GP's surgeries?
It's used in this case, Chair, because there's more than one GP practice. So the NHS, when they're not sure which GP practice may benefit from the money, they then use the care network reference. In most
The
cases,
primary care network means the GP practices
practices
in the town of
locally,
Melksham.
but usually we get a dedicated GP practice, so we know where the money is going. We just don't know which project they're going to come up with.
So this is open to any GP practice in Melksham to bid for the money and say what it's going to do with it.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a very interesting question, Councillor Wickham. Well done. I mean, sometimes these sort of aspirations to put money into healthcare do go awry. They did, I remember particularly, they went seriously awry at the Lee Park development in Westbury, where a site was provided which is supposed to provide a new and second doctor's practice for Westbury, but it was bid for by the existing doctor's practice, who then made an arrangement to sell it back to the developer in return. Anyway, it was a bit of a saga, but these things do need careful scrutiny. Let's go on then to the next. We've got two more waiting. We've got Councillor, all right, I beg your pardon, we've got Councillor Davis waiting to ask a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Just picking up on your point about not encouraging walking on Shells Lane. I know the commercial area quite well by using it in a vehicle, but can officers tell me whether it be near the pond or anything, if there's any footways into the commercial area off of Shells Lane, whether legal, correct, or in which case, I'm just thinking that though it's a commercial area, it does have hospitality things like hotels and pub facilities, things that may be used by people of this, used by people, residents of this new estate. But I can't, if you say about putting up a big fence across Shells Lane so that neither two should meet, you do somewhat discourage the walking element of people wishing to use the other things. But of course, if there isn't an access into the commercial area off of Shells Lane at all, sometimes people make a path when it's not an official path. But if there isn't, then my question is wasted.
As I understand it, there's a solid fence all along that boundary, isn't there? I take your point. I'm aware of many holes in many fences that have been made mostly by children because they are so frustrated at having to walk a very long way around to avoid, etc., etc. Mr. Sims.
I mean, I've been on site twice now and attempted to drive up the head of the week and failed because you can't get a car up there anymore. But my understanding is you've got houses to the southeast, so that's Shells Lane there. I have driven up here and I walked along there, but I can't remember seeing any obvious any formal route from Shells Lane to the commercial development. It is noticeable when you got to the east end that there is a ditch that runs along there. This is a couple of years ago now, 2021. That if you're sprightly, it's probably fine, but someone like me would have difficulty getting across, and that's the A350. But it does highlight that if somebody is determined to get through the gate or over the gate or under the gate, they will do so. We can only do what we can do to limit that access. But as said previously, that was with agreement based on comments from Shells Lane residents in the parish, who, because I think of the accident that Councillor Sankey earlier brought up, they didn't want to see obvious pedestrian or children access from the site easily to get to the A350, which also therefore restricts access if there had been an obvious route through to the commercial development to the south. People are just going to have to use the access really to go north and south along Symington Road.
Right, I see Councillor Davis nodding, so I take it that answers his question. If there are no other questions from members of the council, we'll move on to the important section coming up, which is the public participation. We have the three speakers that I mentioned earlier, Kenneth Graham, Cecilia Hughes, and Richard Wood, who we need to take in that order for reasons of protocol. So we have up to 3 minutes each for Kenneth Graham and Cecilia Hughes, up to 4 minutes for the representative of Melksham Without Parish Council. Are you there, Mr. Graham? Okay, you need to press a button, excuse me, and get a red light, and we will hear you next.
That one? Is it?
Well, the part we were worried about was the gate or a wall going the top of Shales Lane. We didn't want anybody coming down off the site. But as there's a gate going to be going across there, and it's going to be locked, then we're actually quite happy that that's going to be, you know what I'm talking about. We don't want the people from the estate to come just walking right the way down, because of everybody that lives there, apart from one couple that's just moved in, they're all in their 70s and 80s, and they were worried about people coming down there. That was the main issue, that they'll not be using it as a walk down whenever they feel like it.
Okay, well, we've heard you. Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. We can go on then to Cecilia Hughes, who is the agent for the applicant.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the opportunity of speaking to you today. In terms of our ability to construct the access to this scheme, we have received confirmation of our title's registration, and this has been sent to your officer together with an overlay plan which demonstrates that our approved access fits within our title. The appropriate time to challenge the access would have been following the grant of the outline permission, and this opportunity has now passed. We do, of course, understand the issues arising for neighbours of our sites and intend to work with them to minimise disruption and to ensure that emergency access is maintained at all times. The existing Section 106 agreement is already in place. For clarity, however, it is worth my confirming, first, that we expect to positively consider requests to amend this agreement by repurposing sums if called upon by Wiltshire Council. Second, that the Section 106 allows the indicative social housing mix to be varied, and our proposed mix has been accepted by your enabling officer. Third, to prevent pedestrians and cyclists cutting through to the A350 via Shales Lane, we are required to physically block off this area before any occupations, and these details are already improved in principle by the Council. To minimise disruption, our approved construction management plan clearly states that only the new access from Semmington Road would be used by any and all traffic. In addition, to maintain the integrity of the boundary between the site and Shales Lane itself, a condition has been proposed requiring details to be submitted for approval. We understand that the parish wished to see these details, and the officer could liaise on the matter at their request. The proposed leap has been sited next to the main area of open space, which provides opportunities for different types of play adjacent to one another, and for safety would keep users away from the scheme's main thoroughfares. Our housing mix has been changed with an increased proportion of 2- and 3-bed homes to provide choice for a range of customers. Finally, we understand the Parish Council's desire for connection towards Berrifield Hall. We are unable to construct a bridge on land that is not within our ownership. As requested, however, we have incorporated a footpath which could be amended to coordinate with any future project. The Parish Council has been very open and accessible to us in providing guidance on amending our application, a collaborative approach which is appreciated and which we wish to maintain going forward. Having sought to achieve a good quality scheme, which has your officer's recommendation for approval, its delivery is now in your gift. We do very much hope that, having seen and considered our proposals, that you will be content to grant us permission today.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Richard Wood, who is representing Melksham Without Parish Council.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me say that This development initially was opposed by the parish and was passed outline, as you know, after a very vigorous debate. But as it's going forward, we need to make sure that we have a good relationship with David Wilson Homes and also with the Wiltshire Council. Now, first of all, we supported calling in this with Councillor Seed simply because we were worried about the Shells Lane boundary. We were very reassured to hear the details of the gate that's provided, which will prevent exit from the estate onto Shells Lane. And let's just stress that this is a private road. It's a private road that at one end leads on to the very dangerous 350, which has already taken a life by somebody crossing at that point. So it makes no sense at all to have free access onto the Shells Lane for pedestrians. It is also interesting to note that we are going to provide, if we can, a bridge from this development to Bowood View, the one to the north, across Berryfield Brook. And the David Wilson Homes have been very helpful in supporting that object. Wiltshire Council own Berryfield Brook itself, interestingly enough, but we will need landing ground on either side to build our bridge. So that's an important one. So that should be if that can be built into the conditions, that would be very welcome. The one that really concerns us is what we do with this £200,000 that initially was earmarked for improving the crossing of the 350, and which has already been done by Wiltshire Council using other funds. Now, it's our view that this estate, and we initially were worried about this, not sustainable, simply because of its slight isolation, well, more than slight isolation from the rest of Melksham. The nearest primary school crosses a 350. We are concerned that the pupils who go to that school will be able to cross on the new improved Toucan crossing, and it would be useful if there was a condition that we could make the western route into town, which goes across into the estate and get much closer to Aluric, was made much more difficult, if not impossible. But what our main concern here is that the 200,000 should be committed, plus other monies from other 106 pots perhaps, to construct a walking route to the new Pathfinder Way School and to Melksham Oak. And that would involve building another Toucan crossing possibly, and also putting a path on the south side of the 350. It would then link up with existing access to the new school site and also to another controlled crossing from Melksham Town. So we would like that 200,000 to go to that particular project. Now, that's in the gift of Wiltshire Council, but as DWH have agreed that that £200,000 could be happy enough for it to go across that cause, this seems to me a major issue. Accessibility to these outlying estates for kids to walk to school is very, very important. If you want to cut down the traffic, if you want to help the environment, then you must aid walking to school. And at the moment, the existing routes are to walk to Pathfinder Way School are completely inadequate and they offer a barrier to getting to school rather than anything else. So that's an important one.
You are slightly over time. Could you please try to wind up?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I think that's it. That's the main one I want to stress.
It's on the A365.
Well, let's see. It is. It's on the 365. That's a very good point. Okay. So that's the main one. Sustainability for this development would be aided by a proper walking route to the new schools, and we welcome DWH's flexibility in providing a crossing for a bridge that we might want to build and for the provision of a pedestrian-proof gate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wood. It's now, we're into the debate, and I'm going to ask Councillor Seed, who is the local member, to start us off. Councillor Seed.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've probably established that over the last couple of years, this application has progressed from being one that the community very much opposed to one where the community are now accepting, albeit reluctantly, but have serious safety concerns, or some concerns left, amongst which are serious safety concerns involving particularly routes to schools and people walking to schools. There are also issues about sustainable connectivity, people being able to walk to major facilities like the new and outstanding Berryfield Village Hall. So what over the last few weeks, and particularly over the last few days, we've been trying to do is to deliver these concerns through some consensus between the applicants and the community represented by the parish and taking advice from officers. I'm not sure how you want to do this, Chair, because what I'm proposing to do is to, firstly, regrettable that we've had to get here to do this, but we are here doing this, so and that's actually a good thing. I'm proposing to move the officer recommendation with amendments. Now, Chair, do you want me to move the officer recommendation and ask for a seconder, and then come in with the amendments?
No, I think it'd be more helpful if you spelt out how you wish to change the officer recommendation and see if the seconder is happy with the amended motion.
I'm proposing to move the officer amendments with recommendations, and I'm very happy to take you through them. I've taken officer advice on the wording of this so that we're not doing anything illegal. And we've also taken detailed advice from Highways, who have been exceptionally responsive and have come back during the course of the day and given quite a lot of detail, which has enabled us to get the detail you've got down in front of you. So the first thing is the section 106, how we deal with the £200,000, which you will have noted was allocated for something else. And we are to move it into another area which has a similar effect. There will be a requirement for an alternative for a deed of variation to be agreed. We don't, with the applicants, believe that will be a huge problem, because although it does take some time, that can be done concurrently with the time it takes to get the enabling bits together to get this project started. However, having done a deed of variation, I'm proposing an amendment which I think we're going to take as an informative. Is that right, Kenny? Yeah, and that's in front of you. And the wording of that we've taken through Highways and through officers, so that the sum of £200,000 towards route enhancements to improve connectivity between the development, the town centre to the north, and education facilities to the east, inclusive of local cycling, walking, infrastructure plan routes, and measures to reduce the attractiveness to pedestrians of the pedestrian route on the western side of the roundabout between Old Semmington Road and Melksham. So that funding can therefore be channeled into what the community wants. And as a note, I'd like to just add that this should further include consultation with the local member and relevant stakeholders, that being the parish council, who will be party to the designations of funds. That wording and the reasons for which are in front of you there is pretty much agreed, and that's the first one that I'm proposing. And then I'm going to ask for another one, because there was concern about the how closely we're able to the management, the hoarding and everything will prevent will work. I'm asking for that amendment be condition 17 of outline application stipulates the requirement for the erection and maintenance of security hoarding, and for the avoidance of doubt, such hoarding should be erected to prevent any vehicular construction usage of the private road known as Shales Lane. And that's just to tidy up what wasn't actually as clear as it might be in the construction method statement. And again, none of this I think is controversial. Amendment D, could carry on. Amendment C contains Amendment B. Amendment D goes to the local community feel it's important that a footbridge is constructed linking footpaths, footways in the village hall. So we want to add an informative that notwithstanding the submitted detail prior to first occupation, revised details of a new footbridge to link the development site with the village hall should be submitted to and approved in writing to the local planning authority. Now, I've just got to make sure I've got this right. It's as it is in front of you. That's the bit that you sent to me, isn't it, Kenny, in red? Yeah. So it's as it says. This information is also based on the commitment expressed by the applicant to enter into a separate legal agreement with the requisite parties, i.e. the parish council, to bring about the enhanced pedestrian connections, most of which extend beyond the site perimeters. And I'm proposing that we add that basically as an enabling informative. And I think that was it, was it?
Right. Is there a seconder for the motion?
There's one more, sorry, Councillor.
Well, I missed, condition 9, sorry, yes, I have. Yeah. Yeah, develop it.
This
now-
is a programme
right,
that
now-
Councillor Seed has agreed with officers in advance. So
Yeah,
did you want to pick up that last one?
Yeah,
Councillor
condition
Seed?
9. This is a really difficult one to deal with because the big area of newt grazing up in the top right-hand corner is down at the moment to be a wildflower meadow. But the problem that we have is this development is for 144 dwellings. It's only got one leap for people to play on. And if you did that, everything where the cursor is now. And because of this had to be down as part of the mitigation strategy for this application. And what I'm asking for there is that officers and the applicants and the parish council can talk after this and this is again an enabling condition, that some of that might end up being mowed grass for people to kick a ball. Because at the moment, there's nowhere in that estate for people to, for youngsters to go and kick a ball. And you don't want them doing it on the leap, because that's what's likely to happen, or on the edge of the leap. There is concern that the leap's in the wrong place because it's diverse. And if you happen to live in the bottom left of that, your young children are going to go a fair distance away a lot and have to cross the spine road. But that's life, and that's where that has to be gauged against safety and where they are playing, which in itself is not next to Spine Road. So it's been one that's been difficult to arrive at, and the community has expressed concerns, but we are where we are, and obviously we're going with that. This final condition, is an enabling condition to allow that that to happen, should officers be minded to do so.
Just to state that informative.
It's an informative.
Okay, I hope everybody has understood the additions that Councillor Seed is proposing, having discussed them in advance with officers. Is there a seconder for his proposal? Councillor Carbin, would you like to speak to it?
There was one place where I think the word shall was included in an informative, and I don't think you can't force. It has to be
You'd rather have a should,
requested to or
perhaps.
something like that. And I did wonder on the first one, the point about discouraging walking on the western side. I understand what you're doing. You want people to use the official crossing rather than
Yeah,
trying to
and-
cut across on the other side. Could you sort of translate it from the negative to the positive and have it to encourage people to use the eastern route rather than discourage from using the western route? It just sort of goes in with our council's ideology of encouraging walking rather than discouraging it. Again, a very trivial point, not something I'd argue about, but just a couple of things that struck me as we were going through those conditions, Chair.
Should we go back to Councillor Seed? Do you want to clarify?
I'm quite happy to be guided if officers consent.
I mean, we could tweak the wording of that informative if you want to make it a more positively worded informative rather than stating negative on the footpath on the other side. Yes, we could do that.
Okay.
Was pointing out that the word shall, an informative, can't impose an obligation. It's a sort of it's for information to tell an applicant that they need to do something because it's not normally the way.
Should.
Kenny, can you help us? Steve Sims, can you clarify
So
which one
that's-
it is?
That's the, to prevent, yes, see what you mean. So that's effectively the second additional informative that Councillor C is proposing should.
Needs to be
So
erected
it's an informative.
or ought to be erected.
These are all informatives at present.
I mean, either we can impose something as an obligation or we can't. And if we want to impose something as an obligation, we need to make it a condition, don't we?
I mean, the condition has already been, we have a condition on the original outline that detailed some of the wording of that, and that's where this is coming from. That condition has been discharged by the submission of a construction management statement. So what I think you're trying to do is point out that this hoarding should be erected on Shells Lane. That's an informative. I mean, we could as officers...
Is that something that we've already secured through this agreed plan?
Not the timing.
So I think what Councillor T was looking for was more detail than given in the construction management statement. So we could...
Reading that, Chair, I mean, it sounds as if
Let's hear from Kenny.
what we're trying to achieve is clarification on a previous condition. So the word shall is enshrined within the condition. All we're trying to do here is make it quite clear what we're trying to achieve to prevent access to Shells Lane. So the word
So
shall...
should we refer to that previous condition?
Yeah.
In the informative? We
Yeah.
could say in the informative, attention is drawn to condition number, and we can dig out the condition number.
It's there, condition 17.
Okay. Are you happy with that, Councillor Carbin? Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to say? So I've got Councillor Viger. Did you want to come in again on that point, Councillor Seed? Okay, let's go to Councillor Viger.
I personally am comfortable about making these two informatives rather than conditions, because if we are saying, this is the more minor one, that the traffic is going the way that we did not want it to, that the purpose of the condition 17 was to not have the traffic go via Shells Lane. If that was the purpose of a condition, then the condition should be reinforced, not just with an informative, but as a condition. So we should be saying shall, and it should be a condition rather than informative. But more important to me is the previous one, which is A. I heard a very strong argument from the parish council that this is a safety matter, that it is really important to have this crossing, this toucan crossing, so that it encourages the children to use it and go across there. And I thought if it's that important, it shouldn't simply be an informative, it should be a condition. I can't see why we would not have a condition. I can't see the argument for an informative, which is not enforceable, rather than a condition that is.
There's a legal difficulty.
Well, an informative is enforceable if it's referring to a condition that already is enforceable, I suppose. But then that begs the question of, do we need the informative?
But this one is, this, if I read those words, they don't actually say Toucan crossing on the A350. And that's what I'd quite like to see in a condition.
Let's go back to Mr. Sims,
Can I take
who
this,
seems
Chair?
to be on board for, oh, Kenny, you're
Yeah,
going to take
I can take this, Chair. Actually, what we're trying to achieve here is actually an elevated level above a condition. It's a Section 106 variation. So what that informative is referring to is that the developer is expected, encouraged to go through the deed of variation to realign that £200,000 to a different project. What we can't do, we've heard from the parish council suggesting an alternative. That's been looked at by our senior highways team this morning. They cannot commit to it for various reasons. There's legal issues with the land. There's a ditch. That £200,000 would just disappear within 10 minutes. We wouldn't get the footpath. We wouldn't get the crossing. So we don't want to impose a very restrictive project on this development because it wouldn't deliver what we're trying to achieve. We're better off, and the wording that's actually on the screen is from the senior highway officer. Within that, it does allow for that money to go towards that project, but we just need additional money to finish it off.
So you're happy with the existing wording, Kenny, is that it? Yeah. Okay, and you're still happy with the existing wording?
I'm sorry if this is sounding quite complicated, but this bit really was, because what we're effectively trying to do is redirect a Section 106 significant grants. And at this stage, it's extremely difficult to do, but with the help and cooperation of the applicant, the parish council, highways and officers, that's the best we can do to achieve what we all want.
Okay, okay, so we've got the motion from Councillor Seed, moved and seconded. That's what we're debating. Does anyone else wish to speak to it before we go to the vote? No, there's only one motion. It's the recommendation as amended by Councillor Seed and Carbin. So let's go to Councillor Palman.
Mine's a completely different one. I'm quite in favour of this application overall, but I'm very disappointed to see that there's a management company being set up to look after the green spaces, as I do generally think that a lot of people move into these houses, then realise they're being double taxed effectively. Either Wiltshire Council or the local parish or town council will be looking after green spaces elsewhere, which these new house owners will be paying for, but they'll also be paying a management company to look after the immediate green spaces around them. And in Trowbridge, we heavily resist that. And so I'm not in favour of that, but I can't do anything about it.
I know the situation in Trowbridge, which is Trowbridge Town Council takes the view that it's already maintaining a whole lot of green spaces, so it's willing to maintain new spaces that come along through developments. But that may or may not be the case. I think it's unlikely to be the case in very many other places. And what Wiltshire Council can't do is to impose an obligation on a town or parish council to imitate Trowbridge Town Council. And so we've come up, I guess, with the most practical solution that we can. If in due course some third party wanted to come along and say to the management company, we'll take you over free and for nothing, I'm sure they would be delighted. But for the time being, I think we need to stick with...
We've found that's not the case, but there you go.
Really, they tend to not want to be expropriated.
That's right, because it's a good way of raising some extra money, so that they're seen as assets, these management companies, because they can extract more money than their actual cost of doing the maintenance, and the residents have no way of opting out.
No, I take your point, but that does give local control of the residents who each house owner is a member of the management company.
Yeah, so is that the case, that the residents will end up as directors effectively of this company, or is it depends how the management company is run?
It depends how the management company is run, but that's my understanding of how it is dealt with, yes.
Well, they tend to be limited companies with each owner having access to the meetings, but of course you quite often get rented properties where the occupant is different from the owner. Let's go to Councillor Carbin.
Just on that point, yeah, we had one in the southern area where it was similar concerns were raised, and there was a condition put in to give the parish or town council the first refusal on managing the open space. But it is something that needs to be done at this point, because I think once the management company has got its grasp in it, as you say, it's money, isn't it? It's profitable. Of course, one never knows whether the local parish council would want to have anything to do with it, and they might want to run a mile from it, but at least they were given the option. And
I tell you what, let's go back to Councillor Seed on this. He will know all about Belcher without Parish Council. He will know whether it manages any other open spaces and whether it would have any interest in stepping in here and being responsible. What do you think,
It
Councillor?
does have other areas. I'm not sure we can actually have this discussion at this stage unless you want to defer and delegate a discussion. I'm not sure what the mechanics would be of dealing with that at this stage, having not discussed it before the application, because we would have to have got agreement from the council, the parish council, I think, before involving them in something that they haven't signed up to.
Councillor Palman thinks it's too late. Councillor Carbin thinks now is the moment to do it, if ever. But it's you are the mover, and Councillor Carbin is the seconder. So, but I'm so sorry, I can't bring in. We're in debate now, and we're not allowed to bring in anyone who's not a member of the council. It's just one of those obstacles that we have to stick to our procedure. Councillor Seed, you may be able to speak. I see that is the representative of the parish council who's trying to get in, but you'll have to speak on their behalf, I think.
I could speak on their behalf if I could have a quick conversation.
Do you want to have a quick conversation with the town council, parish councillor? And I will go to Councillor Kirk, who is waiting to get in.
Thank you, Chair. Just going on Councillor Parman's point, I think there are two distinct different types of management company. We have a particular case in Trowbridge where the land is embedded and owned by, in effect, the management company. That cannot be removed from that situation. Under normal management companies, once they're established, they can be transferred out with a vote from the actual residents. So the key point for me is, as long as it's not the example of one estate we got in Trowbridge where there's no way out forever and those residents are stuck in that management company, however bad they do the job, whatever happens, they're stuck in that situation. Other estates in Trowbridge, we have one in Trowbridge which is trying to come out of its management company and hopefully will. But I think there are those two distinct cases. I don't know if Kenny can help if I mention the estate in question in terms of a different legal setup, but its Castlemead in Trowbridge has a different setup from most estates going forward. Thank you, Chair. And I think that is an important...
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. You're quite right. I mean, these situations do differ, but the great difficulty arises when a management company gets into the hands of people who, a little bit like some town and parish councils, some are extremely, I have parish councils in my patch which spend no money at all and raise a zero precept, and then there are others that are extremely fond of providing services. Let me put it as diplomatically as possible. And management companies, I think, fall into the same sort of range of variations. And if you get one, if you're obliged to pay the annual service charges of one of those management companies that thinks that money is here to be spent, you can end up a lot poorer than you were to start with. But Councillor Seed, you've had a word with the parish council.
And I think that this is too late. If it had been raised at a much earlier stage, the view of the parish council is they were not offered the opportunity to manage, for instance, the Leap. And if they had been, they would have taken it. But they don't have the remit to do it now from the council, so they can't make a decision. It's unfair to ask them to make a decision on the hoof here. So I think we're going to have to leave that as it is. But for the future, when we're crafting 106s, there are some parish councils who will run a mile from running anything, but this particular parish council is very active, very efficient, and has got the facility to manage and do these things. But I think the result is I think we have to leave it as it is.
Can I just go to Kenny Green? Kenny, is it too late to leave the door open to that possibility, do you think?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is too late. I mean, the Section 106 does have a series of clauses already about the management company. Steve might know at this stage whether they've actually even started that process of submitting the details that the council needs to discharge the various clauses. So we've already got a series of requirements that the developer would have to discharge in terms of providing the details of the setup of the management company, which may or may not be the parish council. I've dealt with a scheme in Lavington recently where the parish council initially suggested they'd be keen, and then they ended up not taking it forward, but at least they were given the opportunity. I might suggest that when future applications come to the committees, it would be useful if we've certainly got parish councils involved with those developments. They give a view on whether they would be willing to take on public open space, play areas, if an application is supported by committee or if they wish to support an application. Because that would be useful to progress a Section 106 to know whether that party would be involved in the discussions or not. But it's too late for this application, Chair.
Thank you, Kenny. I mean, clearly there's the difficulty that normally parish councils are not jumping for joy about new housing estates being proposed. Councillor Scott Palmer.
Yeah, I think what it needs, our core policies need changing, because at the moment Wiltshire core policy is to push for a management company to be set up rather than the council taking it over. So I think it's something with the new local plan that it would be nice to have some clarity on.
Okay, well, we'll leave the members to pass that on to the strategic planners as a thought. Mr. Kenny Green.
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point, I would say, councillors, you have the ultimate say on the adoption of the local plan. So if that is something that councillors do really want to get actively involved in, then you will have that opportunity to make that change as necessary to a local plan.
We do have the ultimate say, but the local plan has to go through a long, complicated statutory process, and amending it after it's published for the first consultation is surprisingly frowned upon. So it would be something that would need to be done at a very early stage, I would have thought. Anyway, we'll leave that thought. This is not a member for us to decide today. We're just having a general conversation about an interesting point, which is not critical to determining this application. So is anybody else waiting to speak? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chairman. I might have missed something here. I'm not quite sure why planning officer is saying we can't do this, but I thought Councillor Carbine said at a Southern Committee, it's simply been put in that the parish council was given the option. So why is there a difficulty with putting that in here somewhere? Because we haven't given this sort of permission yet.
I think Mr. Sims is saying that there are bits in the Section 106 agreement which is legally binding on the council, which have made a commitment. Is that right, Mr. Sims?
Sorry, from what Kenny said, yes. I mean, the Section 106 was agreed at outline stage with provisions that there's quite a large section on the provisions of the management company is supposed to do. So we would have to go back to the original Section 106 and change that. So at this point, I think it basically should have been dealt with at the original outline stage, with the council informing us that they wanted to take on the open space at that point.
Chairman, sorry, the outline application was for access.
No, the outline application is for 144 houses with detailed access.
Yeah.
The Section 106 includes everything that will set a burden on the developer, including the setting up of a management company. So the management company could be the parish council, could be a different entity altogether. We don't know who that's going to be. So there is still a process still to be followed in terms of who that, or whatever form that management company will be in. So there's no need to attach any further details to this reserve matters, because the reserve matters is bound by the outline permission and the Section 106. So I'm not quite sure why we we'd be wanting to amend the management company clauses, because we've heard today from the parish council that they have not got the authority to make a decision for the parish council. So the option is still there for them to engage with the developer to decide amongst themselves whether they want to be that management company. We've not had that information through the Section 106. So
Okay, that's very helpful, Kenny. I think the reason we're discussing it is that Councillor Parliament floated it as a suggestion, and we seem to have got to the point of we've got something in the Section 106 agreement which is signed up to and a legal commitment by the council and the developer, and Kenny thinks that it's not too late for the parish council and the developer to talk to each other if the parish council was interested in being the management company. So Councillor Seed, I think, wishes to leave the matter as it stands. Is that right, Councillor Seed? And then I've got Councillor, forgive me, I'll go to Councillor Seed and then I'll come to Councillor Kirk.
The answer is at the moment, I think that's the most sensible thing on this particular application. And in future, one of the things that has changed in the council in the last year is that an openness to involve communities in 106 agreements at an early stage. That wasn't always the case, and it is extremely helpful. It wasn't the case when this started. So, but I think we've got to accept we are where we are, and let's move on as we are.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, I can remember a time when the council was very reluctant to involve local members in the Section 106 agreement. Let's go to Councillor Kirk, and then I think we've probably got to the point where we would go to the vote.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going on what Kenny Green said, the management company structure, if the residents have control of the management company, then the way I see it is they do have a way out. They can then go to the parish council and the rest of it. What I was saying was, as long as it's not the situation we've got in one estate in Trowbridge, where the land, they don't have title to the land, they are stuck with that management company forever. They cannot get out of it under any circumstances. With this, as far as I'm aware, residents will have control of the management company at some point, and then it's for them to decide at a later date. They could go to the parish council. I assume I've got that correct, Kenny, but that's my interpretation of the castle.
Kenny, you're on top of this Section 106. Does the management company get to the title to the land that it's going to manage?
Good question, Chair. We don't know, because as Steve, he's the case officer, he's never seen any details for this management company. So we don't have that level of information yet. It's still within the Section 106, still to be determined by the developer. So they've not put forward that level of detail. So we don't know yet.
Okay, well, it sounds as if this is still all up in the air and it's a matter to be discussed by the developer as to what it wants to do about a management company. And the parish council may or may not wish to feed in some thoughts on that. But I think Councillor Seed is wanting to stick with his motion as moved, and Councillor Carbon, I think, is still willing to second that. So, Councillor Seed, do you want to sum up before we go to the vote?
I just thank everyone for sticking with this, and I think we're getting where we need to get. And I'd like to move to the vote.
Okay, in that case, it has been moved and seconded for the recommendation as amended by Councillor Seed and shown on the screen. Would all in favour of that please show? I think that is unanimous. Are there any against? Are there any abstentions? No. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you very much indeed to the local member and to the members of the public for coming along and helping us. And I think, Mr. Graham, I think you got what you wanted out of that, which is that there's going to be a gate along the entrance to the estate. Thank you, everybody.